Tonight on the Late Debate, the murder of student Henry Novak. The Essex teenager's death ignited a national row, but what does it tell us about policing, politics and the debate on knives?
We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension. We want his story to make our streets safer for everyone.
Also tonight, beleaguered and bereft, is Sir Keir Starmer damaged beyond repair by revelations in the Mandelson files? And why London's mayor thinks an outright social media ban is the only way to protect children online. Hello and welcome to the Late Debate. The murder of an Essex teenager and the way he was treated by police has sparked a huge political debate. Henry Novak from Chafford 100 told officers he'd repeatedly been stabbed and couldn't breathe as they put him in handcuffs. His attacker lied about being the victim of a racist attack. Henry's family don't want his death to stoke division, but the Prime Minister accused Reform leader Nigel Farage of doing just that.
Can he take some action, end this divisive practice of two-tier policing and make sure that all British citizens are treated the same?
Exploiting this tragedy to create grievance and division would be wrong in any circumstances, but to do it when the family are expressly saying, please don't, is unforgivable. It shows exactly who he is.
Joining me now to discuss that are my guests this week. Miatta Fahnbulleh is the Labour MP for Peckham, until recently a minister in the government. Louis French is the Conservative MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup. And Paul Kohler represents Wimbledon for the Liberal Democrats. Welcome all of you. Louis, is there two-tier policing in Britain?
I don't believe there is. I represent a number of police officers that live in my constituency. I do a lot of work with the police. I would say quite openly the vast majority of police officers are decent, hard-working citizens of this country. That doesn't mean there is not a massive issue at play in this case. The way the police have dealt with this case is clearly wrong, and that's why there should be an IOPC investigation. It's why the police were correct to apologise to the family of Henry Novak for this tragic incident that's happened. And we need to look at the various elements of policing which are causing some of these issues and the concern. But the way that the tragic death has been politicised by other parties is completely wrong.
You all agree that it's been politicised?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And look, I think in all of the debate, we've got to remember at the heart of this is a family that's lost a son and a brother in the most harrowing way possible. And they have to be front and centre of this debate. And I think, when the father was very, very clear that the debate should not be politicised, it should not be used to stoke division, I think it is pretty disgraceful and unforgivable that certain politicians have done that.
But Nigel Farage was saying what some people think, genuinely, isn't that right?
Maybe some, but not many. I think he was politicising it. But I think we have to respect what Mark Novak said and not politicise it ourselves. So even attacking Nigel Farage becomes politicising if we're not careful. I would just ignore what Farage said. He looked embarrassed in the chamber when he said it. Let's move on and look at the real underlying issues that are there.
And what do you think those are?
I think there was an overcorrection with the police. They were once institutionally racist. We saw that with the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. But I think there's an issue of training now. It's quite clear, listening to the police representatives, that some of those police officers didn't know how to act. Now that's a failure of the training, and that's what we have to look at, I think.
Louis, what do you think needs to change?
Well, I think we should definitely try and keep this case separate to the actual ongoing challenges that the policing face. I think that's the wishes of the family. This is they are heartbroken, and that's the clear wishes of the family. But I think we have to look at the guidance going to police officers in training. We need to look at issues within sentencing. And that's what our party, the Conservative Party, is looking to do, is to have a more holistic approach and review of policing and where these issues are coming from and have the evidence to do that, not to do it as just a reaction to a tragic case, because that could lead to overcorrection, that could lead to issues elsewhere. So we need to have a calm, measured approach that looks at the evidence, looks at the policy details and tries to correct some of these issues within the justice system.
But we do have to learn from that.
Absolutely, yeah, we absolutely have to learn, yeah.
Yeah, and look, for me, I think an investigation is happening and the investigation should be allowed to take its course, and out of that will come a set of recommendations about what went wrong. And it is a very difficult thing to be a police officer in this day and age, and there are a whole set of pressures that they are under. Clearly something went very badly wrong in this instance. I don't think it was a question of race. I think there was someone that was harmed and detained in a way and was asking for help and wasn't given help. And ultimately, you've got to get to the bottom of that and understand why that happened. To what extent is it to do with training versus culpability of individuals, if there is culpability, and then a set of actions should be taken over on the other side of that.
Those videos from that body-worn camera are so shocking, aren't they? I mean, it is hard to watch that and not wonder why on earth the police behaved they did.
Yeah, Simon, so I think if you look at we've all seen, well, most of us have seen a small element of the footage, right? And it's awful to watch, Henry pleading for help on the ground. But we also have to remember that the family of the murderer, and I'm not going to say his name, lied to the police. So the police have turned up there with a different circumstance in their mind to what's happening on the ground. And that's why it's absolutely right that the murderer has been sent to prison for life, and the family, as I understand it, are being prosecuted as well. That is the right thing to do because they've lied to the police. When that young boy could have been getting help, they were lying to the police about what his actions were, and it's sadly, it looks like it's cost his life.
One of the problems might be that the independent investigation by the IOPC could take 3 months or more. Is that going to be concerning?
I think that they've got to take their time to work this out. Rushing to judgment would not be a sensible idea. I don't think 3 months is too long to actually get this right. And what I'd say is, if you listen to that video, it's a terrible thing. You hear his rights Henry's rights being read to him as the last thing he heard. But there was a woman police officer saying, no, we must check. There was good things happening there as well, but she was ignored by the others, it seemed.
We talked about overcorrection. Louis talked about overcorrection. Are you worried about that?
No, look, I think in the end, let's let the investigation play its course so we know what went wrong. And I think it's really, really dangerous for people to wade in, particularly politicians, because we often do that with particular biases and with half views. I think let the investigators make their judgment on what went wrong in that instance, and there will be action that comes off the back of it.
There are hard-won anti-racism and diversity reforms that have emerged in recent years, particularly post-Macpherson. It would concern you, presumably, if those were watered down.
I mean, look, if you speak to, I represent Peckham, and you speak to where there is sadly not much trust in the police amongst many of our community, and you speak to some of the young black boys that have to encounter the police, and they will tell you that there is more work to be done on racism. So in the end, there is a long way that the police has to go. I say that recognising it's a really tough job and you're having to make judgment calls in really difficult situations. But there is more that we must do to ensure that, and I can only speak for the Met, that the institutional racism that we have had emerge time and time again is dealt with. And that's something that the Met is committed to doing, and I think they need to continue that process.
We heard Mark Novak, Henry's father, on the steps of the court there saying that knife crime was the issue that he wants addressed and it should be treated as a national emergency. Do you think that's right?
Well, of course it is. He's absolutely right. And it said so much about the man. He stood there and said that when his heart must have been utterly broken, what he'd seen happen to his son. And he put the community forward and said, look, let's fight for better things. Let's address knife crime. It's an amazing moment.
Is it a national emergency in your view, Louis?
I think that the data speaks for itself. I think we have got major issues of knife crime. Obviously that was not in London, but across the country, but in particular London, we've suffered far too many innocent young lives being lost to knife crime. I think what the Conservative Party are quite clear on your earlier question is we need to have equality in the face of the law. That is how we stop this dividing people and pitting people against each other, to make sure that everyone is treated equally in the eye of the law. And we do need to clamp down on knife crime. I've been very clear and very vocal about my belief in stop and search being an effective tool to get knives off the street. I think some of the scan and search technologies can also help with that in a less invasive way. So I think we need to make sure the police have got all the powers they can to take these knives off the street.
OK, let's move on, because we've got other things that we want to talk about, because 2 weeks today, Sir Keir Starmer's fate could be sealed. The Prime Minister could return to the backbenches as the MP for Holborn and St Pancras if Labour loses the Makerfield by-election. Until then, it's business as usual, made more difficult this week by the Mandelson files and an uncomfortable disclosure about tax and benefits.
He has no authority, and we know why. His MPs will not let him do anything. The Welfare Secretary said in private what they won't dare say in public. He said, "Every meeting I have with Labour MPs is about who can we tax in order to pay more benefits."
Miatta, you were the first minister to resign in the wake of Labour's disastrous local election results. Did you jump too early, or do you regret it?
No, look, no regrets. It's a very, very tough and personal decision that that I made, that anyone has to make when they choose to resign. And for me, the local elections and the hundreds and hundreds of conversations I had on my doorstep were a pretty sobering experience. And what was very clear from my constituents, at least, and I can only speak for my constituents and for Peckham, was that they had lost confidence and trust in the Prime Minister and did not believe that he could deliver the scale and pace of change that they required. That's also my judgment, which is why I didn't think I could be part of the front bench team. A tough decision. I still want the government to be a success. And I think we've got a responsibility to make sure that we deliver the mandate for change. And that's definitely what I'll continue advocating and fighting for from the backbenchers.
Were you disappointed more ministers, and in particular more cabinet ministers, didn't follow your example?
No, because it wasn't a coup. I think different people responded to that set of circumstances in a very personal and individual way. That was the thing that was right for me. That was a decision I made, but other colleagues made different decisions. I think what is important now is that we as a Labour Party, we aren't the Tories. We don't do leadership chaos and regicide every 2 days, which was the experience before. So look, we will have to rally, and we will rally because there is one thing that matters, which is a country that is in pain after 15 years and that desperately needs us to deliver the change that we promised. And we've got to pull our socks, we've got to pull ourselves together in order to make sure that we deliver that.
Louis, your party has a bit of experience of lame duck prime ministers. Do you think it's last chance saloon, or?
Oh, it's over already. I think, you're within 2 years of a general election. We've got a complete zombie government. And Labour Party, as much as Miatta says otherwise, are arguing amongst themselves what the future of the Labour Party should look like, let alone who's in charge of the ship. So I think Labour are in serious trouble. They're getting squeezed on both of their flanks from other parties. Conservative Party's focus is on governing, and that's the biggest mistake the Labour Party have made. They were not prepared to govern, and that's why they're in such a mess already. They've got no vision, no strategy, no idea about how to govern or what to do. And as these embarrassing text messages that are revealing each week is how the level of infighting going on within that cabinet. And it was a bit strange that Peter Mandelson, of all people, was the agony aunt that they were all running to tell.
Zombie government, Paul?
It is a zombie government. Nothing's happening in Parliament at the moment. It's clear they're waiting for this leadership election, which isn't happening, to happen. It's very strange. Miatta says it's not chaos. It's utter chaos at the moment. You're having a by-election with a proxy leadership election, and yet there's no discussion of policy. It's all about personality. But of course, they're building on the foundations of the Tory party. You had utter chaos beforehand. It's been chaos followed by chaos.
Well, look, what I would say, I don't think it is a zombie government, and I'd point to, for example, the rail bill that's about to come through.
It got delayed this week. It got delayed this week because of what's happening.
I will point to the package that we've just put forward to support people with the cost of living. So the government is doing things. Now, my argument is that we need to be doing far more in order to repair the damage of the last 14 years under the Tories and to respond to demand for change. What I think you will see from us is that there is a battle of ideas happening. It isn't infighting. I think different people have a different view about how we step up to what is a hugely challenging set of circumstances.
What is one policy difference between them?
In which we're trying to affect change.
What is the battle of ideas between the two leadership candidates at the moment, or the three?
Well, there isn't a leadership contest, to be fair. There isn't a leadership contest. But what you will see is there is a debate within the party that we're trying to do in a respectful way about how we step up and deliver what the country is asking for, and the sorts of ideas that candidly can respond to, we're not in business as usual times.
A lot of what happens next depends on whether Andy Burnham wins Makerfield, and we are duty bound to point out that there are in fact 14 candidates standing in that by-election in the Northwest, even though viewers down here don't have a vote. Miatta, can I ask you about Andy Burnham? Is he your man for number 10?
Well, look, there are two things. Andy Burnham needs to win the Makerfield by-election. That is the number one priority, and I'm 100% behind him to do that. I think he can win that seat. But more importantly, I think he's a really effective politician. I think the ability to have...
That sounds like your team, Bernard.
The ability to have an emotional connection with constituents, which is something we've seen that he's achieved as the Mayor for Greater Manchester. But more than that, in Manchester, he's shown a model of how you deliver change in difficult circumstances, the fastest growing city region. I think we need that talent in our top team at the national level, which is why I support him coming into Parliament, and will do everything I can, as will many of my colleagues, to make sure that he does win that by-election.
Louis, does the opposition fear Andy Burnham?
No, not at all. I actually agree with Wes Streeting for once. I think Andy Burnham is untested. And one of the comments that Wes Streeting was saying yesterday is that there needs to be a leadership in contest. Of course, he's going to say that, but it was to scrutinise the ideas. I think this is. It feels to me a bit of a bubble. I think he's obviously fairly popular in the Manchester area, but he was given a lot of money by the previous Conservative government to deliver a lot of the things that he champions and talks about. No, it is. And actually, no. In all seriousness, I think there's a big issue here where you've effectively got someone's pitch of being an anti-London wannabe MP, and even Sadiq Khan said himself, the Labour Party have taken London for granted, and I think if you have this shift towards trying to shore up their northern vote from reform, because effectively that's what it's about, then actually what happens to London? London gets further left behind, and that will be a concern for my constituents that are all saying, well, what about London? What's happening for London's policies?
Can I just come back to, as a London MP, so I don't think it is the North against London. I think...
His rhetoric is.
I think the argument that he is making is that we've had an economic model for 40 years that candidly has left an economy that doesn't work for ordinary people. And that is as true in Greater Manchester as it is in Peckham. And ultimately, we've got to turn that around. And that is about delivering the essentials for people, but also that's making sure that when the economy does grow, and there's a huge amount that we need to do to get it to grow, it benefits people
but it's not about
in the working class
London.
and the middle class.
London and the South East are net contributors to the economy. Every other region takes money from it. To attack London and the South East is not the way forward.
I
and
don't
all his
believe there's been
rhetoric
attack.
is that it's anti-London.
So
constantly.
it's anti-Westminster, and that is different. And candidly, if you go to parts of Peckham, they are as anti-Westminster as people in Makerfield or Greater Manchester are. Because fundamentally, politics in Westminster needs to change.
Can we pause on the Labour leadership for a moment? Because there's one other topic I'd like to talk about, and that's London's mayor wants under-16s to be banned from social media. Sadiq Khan said tech companies needed to prove their apps were safe, and he was worried how misogyny could spread like wildfire. Research also shows boys in London are adopting negative attitudes they found online.
We know the government's consulting on what to do with restrictions for those under 16. We know in Australia there is a ban for those under 16. It can't be beyond the wit of us to make sure that until social media is safe, young people shouldn't be on there.
Paul, as a Liberal Democrat, I assume bans aren't in your DNA.
We believe in film classification. We absolutely believe that we should ban youngsters seeing pornography online, being manipulated by algorithms. Of course we do. That's responsible.
But a blanket ban?
Not a blanket ban. We would go for film classification system all the way up to 18. We would classify. We require classification. But in the absence of that, we would support a ban up to 16.
Your party has been championing this. Do you worry that actually it's not enforceable?
No, I believe it is enforceable. And, similar to Paul, my natural position is not to want the state to ban things from people being able to use. But it's very clear, the evidence is very clear here, right? The young people are struggling, they're accessing content and materials that they shouldn't be able to. You've got issues of cyberbullying, particularly in schools. And I think the evidence base is so clear now that this is beyond a parental issue. And, some of the arguments previously were this should be for parents to decide. Well, I think the issue for society is now much broader than that. And that's why my party have forced a U-turn out of the government on this particular issue. We believe the government doesn't need to consult. The evidence is there. Let's just get on with it. Let's protect children and let children be children.
As constituency MPs, how much does this occupy your in tray?
So it's definitely coming up, particularly schools are worried about it and parents. I come at the issue as a parent first, actually. I've got an 11-year-old and I am braced for the battles around smartphones and social media. And so actually I do want the government to grip this more. I do think that we're going to look back at this period and this generation of young people that have been exposed to all sorts on social media and think, what on earth were we all doing? So you've got to get it right because part of the question will be enforcement. But I think that we need something that is far more holistic so that it candidly makes the life of parents much easier, but also we are protecting young people because the stuff that they have access to at the moment is just unforgivable.
Wouldn't your suggestion of a film classification be quite complicated?
Well, it works with films. You would have a default position, which is the classification is 18, and the sites could apply to have a lower classification. But if that's regarded as too complicated, we will go for the band up to 16. We think a film classification system is far more subtler and means that children get the benefit of the internet. Of course, there is a benefit there, and we've got to equip them with the tools to actually use it when they get to 16. So we think film classification is a far more nuanced and sensible approach. But let's see.
Louis said no consultation needed, get on with it. Is the government dithering?
No, because I don't think it's as simple as just banning it. And again, I come at it as a parent and just how you enforce it. And for some parents, you know, we're really clear. Our kids aren't going to have, they're going to have the old school brick phones. They're not going to, we're going to try to sort of police that. But that's not consistent across all households. And what are you going to do in every single household? So I think there is a consultation that's required in order to get this right. And candidly, if you speak to young people, they've got a very different view about what should or shouldn't be banned. And I think their views have to be taken into this as well. The piece of the government is getting that balance right between protecting our young people, making it a level playing field across all households, irrespective of how strict the parents are or not, and getting to something that can actually be deliverable and enforceable, because that's what really matters.
It's going to be hard to take something away from young people that they've already tasted, isn't it?
It is, and you know, I think the point that Miatta was making, we have an issue here where some parents are trying to protect their children from being exposed to this, while the rest of their classmates are online, they're talking at night, sometimes sadly talking and cyberbullying is going on. So I think there is an inconsistency, but that's why I said I think this is beyond an individual parent choice now, which would be my normal disposition. But you know, this is the number one issue in my mailbox this year, you know, coming in from parents, is this particular issue. They are worried, they're seeing the implications, they're seeing the violence being put online, and their children are being exposed to things far too young they should be exposed to. So I think, you know, parents want it to happen. They're fed up with the government, to be quite honest, as you can probably imagine. You know, their taxes are going up, they feel like things are getting worse, the cost of living is getting worse, and they feel their children are not being protected.
To you, Paul, this is a big issue.
A huge issue. It's been the biggest thing in my mailbox is exactly this, and we have to address it. And if we're seen to consult too long, we'll look like we're just relaxing and not taking it seriously. We have to take it seriously.
OK, well, that's about all we've got time for. Hope you enjoyed seeing the Mayor's new look there with his post-Hajj haircut, which she's very proud of, but says he's going to grow back. Thank you to my guests tonight, to Miatta Fahnbulleh, to Louis French and Paul Kohler. We're back next month for the last late debate of this parliamentary season. Until then, goodbye and thank you for watching.